Jessica Carter stood outside the conference room, smoothing down her navy blazer for the third time in 2 minutes. Her hands wouldn't stop trembling, and she hated herself for it. She had prepared this campaign proposal for weeks, staying late every night, triple-checking every statistic, every projection. It was flawless. She knew it was flawless. The door swung open, and Harrison Blake strode past her without so much as a glance. His charcoal suit was perfectly tailored, accentuating his tall frame, and his dark hair was styled with precision. Everything about him screamed power and control. Jessica took a deep breath and followed him inside, clutching her portfolio against her chest like a shield. The other executives filed in, exchanging pleasantries and coffee. Jessica took her seat at the far end of the table, the spot she always occupied. Not quite part of the inner circle, but close enough to be useful. Harrison settled into his chair at the head of the table, opened his laptop without greeting anyone. His jaw was set in that familiar hard line, the one Jessica had come to recognize as his default expression, at least when he looked at her. "Let's begin," Harrison announced, his voice cutting through the casual chatter. "Jessica, present the campaign proposal for the Meridian account." Jessica stood, her legs steadier than she expected. She distributed the printed materials and pulled up her presentation on the screen. As she began speaking, explaining the market research and proposed strategy, she felt her confidence return. This was good work. Really good work. As you can see from the demographics, our target audience responds particularly well to authentic storytelling. I've outlined a multi-platform approach that leverages both traditional and digital media to create sustained engagement over the next quarter. She continued through the slides, detailing budget allocations and projected returns. Several executives nodded approvingly. Even Margaret from finance, who rarely showed enthusiasm for anything, seemed impressed, but Harrison's expression remained unchanged. Cold, calculating, critical when Jessica finished. She returned to her seat, allowing herself a small moment of satisfaction. She had nailed it. Harrison closed the folder without looking up. This proposal lacks innovation. The strategy is predictable, the approach is safe, and frankly, it's exactly what I'd expect from someone who doesn't understand what makes this company exceptional. The words hit Jessica like a physical blow. Around the table, the other executives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "With all due respect, Mr. Blake," Jessica said, keeping her voice level despite the heat rising in her chest, "the research supports every element of this strategy. The ROI projections are conservative but realistic, and the timeline accounts for market variables." "The numbers aren't the problem," Harrison interrupted, finally looking at her. His green eyes were ice. "The problem is that this is derivative work. It's competent, I'll give you that. But competent isn't enough. It's not here. Not for me." Jessica felt her face flush. "Then perhaps you could explain what you're actually looking for instead of simply tearing down months of work." The room went silent. No one challenged Harrison Blake, certainly not in front of the entire executive team. Harrison stood slowly, walking around the table until he was standing beside her chair. "What I'm looking for, Ms. Carter, is someone who brings vision, not just data. Someone who understands that great campaigns don't come from following formulas. They come from taking risks." "I understand risk," Jessica said, tilting her chin up to meet his gaze. "I also understand that reckless spending on unproven concepts is how companies waste millions of dollars." Something flashed in Harrison's eyes. Anger, maybe. Or something else she couldn't name. "This meeting is over," he said abruptly. "Everyone out. Jessica, my office." Now, the executives gathered their materials and filed out quickly, avoiding eye contact with both of them. Jessica remained seated for a moment, gathering her composure before standing and following Harrison out of the conference room. His office occupied the entire top floor corner. With floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city, it was stunning and intimidating, much like the man himself. Harrison gestured to the chair across from his desk. Jessica sat, crossing her legs and folding her hands in her lap. "Do you enjoy challenging me in front of my executive team?" Harrison asked, leaning back in his leather chair. "Do you enjoy humiliating me in front of them?" Jessica countered. Harrison's jaw tightened. I'm not humiliating you. I'm holding you to the standards I hold everyone at this company. No, you're not, Jessica said, her voice quiet but firm. You're harder on me than anyone else here, and we both know it. I've watched you praise work that's half as thorough as what I just presented. So either I'm truly incompetent, which I don't believe, or there's something else going on here. Harrison stood and walked to the windows, his back to her. The silence stretched between them, heavy with things neither of them wanted to say. You should have stayed away from me that night, he finally said, his voice low. Jessica's breath caught. So they were finally going to talk about it. The company gala 3 months ago? The champagne. The chemistry that had been building between them for a year? The hotel room. You kissed me first, Jessica reminded him. Harrison turned to face her, and for the first time since that night, she saw something other than ice in his expression. Pain, maybe. Regret. And it was a mistake. You made that abundantly clear the next morning, Jessica said, standing. When you told me to leave and pretend it never happened. When you started treating me like I was invisible, unless you were criticizing my work, because it can't happen again, Harrison said, moving closer. You work for me, Jessica. I'm your boss. It was inappropriate and unprofessional, and I take full responsibility for that. How noble of you, Jessica said bitterly. And punishing me for it every day since then? That's professional? Harrison closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, they held that familiar coldness again. The walls were back up. If you find the work environment here unsatisfactory, perhaps you should consider other opportunities. Are you firing me? I'm suggesting that maybe this isn't the right fit anymore. Jessica laughed without humor. You're incredible. You know that? You sleep with me? Regret it. Make my life miserable for 3 months. And now you want me to quit so you don't have to deal with the inconvenience of my presence. That's not what I'm saying. Then what are you saying, Harrison? Jessica demanded, using his first name deliberately. Tell me straight. What do you want from me? Harrison looked at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. I want you to make this easier. For both of us. Jessica felt tears prick at her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. You don't get to ask that of me. Not after everything. She turned to leave, but before she reached the door, a wave of nausea hit her so suddenly that she had to grab the back of a chair to steady herself. The room tilted slightly. Jessica. Harrison's voice sounded distant, concerned. She took a deep breath, trying to calm her stomach. This had been happening every morning for the past 2 weeks. She had been ignoring it, telling herself it was stress. But deep down, she knew better. I'm fine, she managed to say. You're not fine. You're pale. Sit down, I said. I'm fine, Jessica insisted, straightening up. The nausea was passing. I just need to get back to work. She left his office before he could respond, walking as quickly as she could without running. She made it to the women's restroom just in time, barely locking the stall door before she was sick when she finally emerged. Her friend and coworker Rachel was waiting by the sinks. That's the 3rd time this week, Rachel said gently, handing her paper towels. Jessica, you need to see a doctor. It's just stress, or it's something else, Rachel said meaningfully. Have you taken a test? Jessica's hand stilled on the paper towel. No, girl, you need to. Like today. 2 hours later, Jessica sat on the closed toilet lid in her apartment bathroom, staring at the positive pregnancy test in her trembling hands. 3 months. The timing was exact. There had been no one else. Just that one night with Harrison. One perfect, terrible night that had changed everything. She thought about his words in his office earlier. Make this easier. What would he say when he found out? Would he accuse her of trying to trap him? Would he offer her money to disappear? The thought made her feel sick again. Jessica looked at her reflection in the bathroom mirror. She looked exhausted, frightened. But underneath the fear, there was something else. A fierce protectiveness already forming for the tiny life growing inside her she didn't need. Harrison Blake. She had her own salary, her own apartment, her own life. She could do this alone. She would do this alone. But first, she had to tell him. 3 days later, Jessica found herself outside Harrison's office again, but this time it was evening. Most of the staff had gone home. She had rehearsed what she would say 100 times, but now that the moment was here, all her carefully planned words evaporated. She knocked on his door. "Come in," his voice called. Harrison looked up from his computer as she entered, surprise crossing his features. "Jessica, I thought you'd left for the day." "I need to talk to you," she said, closing the door behind her. "It's important." Harrison gestured to the chair, but Jessica remained standing. If she sat down, she might lose her nerve. "What is it?" he asked, studying her face with concern. Jessica took a deep breath. "I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air between them. Harrison's expression went completely blank, all emotion draining from his face. "Pregnant," he repeated, as if testing the word yes 3 months. "Yes." She watched as he did the mental calculation, saw the exact moment when understanding hit him. His face went pale. "It's mine," he said. Not a question. A statement. "Yes." Harrison stood abruptly, walking to the windows, his back to her. His shoulders were rigid, his hands clenched at his sides. "I don't expect anything from you," Jessica said quickly. "I'm telling you because you have a right to know, but I can handle this on my own. You don't need to be involved if you don't want to be. Don't want to be." Harrison turned around, and the expression on his face was unlike anything she had ever seen there. Shock, fear, and something that might have been wonder. "Jessica, that's my child. Our child. How could I not want to be involved? Because you've made it very clear that what happened between us was a mistake you'd rather forget." "A baby isn't a mistake," Harrison said firmly. He crossed the room until he was standing in front of her. "How are you feeling? Have you seen a doctor? Are you taking prenatal vitamins?" The sudden flood of questions caught Jessica off guard. "I have an appointment next week." "And yes, I started taking vitamins. Next week?" Harrison frowned. "That's too long to wait. I'll call Dr. Phillips. She's the best obstetrician in the city. She can see you tomorrow." "Harrison, I don't need you to arrange my medical care." "Yes, you do," he said, and there was that controlling edge again. "You need the best care available, and you're going to have it." Jessica felt tears sting her eyes. "I can't do this with you. This back and forth. The coldness, and then sudden concern. I need to know where we stand." Harrison reached out as if to touch her face, then dropped his hand. "Move in with me." Jessica stared at him. "What?" "Move into my penthouse. You'll have everything you need there. The best food, comfortable space, no stress." "I'll take care of everything. That's your solution?" "I move in with you and you just take care of everything like I'm some kind of project?" "You're carrying my child," Harrison said. "That makes you my responsibility." The word hit Jessica like a slap. Responsibility. Not a partner. Not someone he cared about. A responsibility. "I'm not your responsibility, Harrison. And I'm not moving in with you." She turned toward the door. "Jessica, wait." She paused, but didn't turn around. "Please," he said, and the words sounded foreign coming from him. "Just think about it. Think about what's best for the baby." Jessica looked back at him over her shoulder. "That's all I've been thinking about since I saw that positive test. And what's best for this baby is a parent who's there because they want to be, not out of obligation." She left before he could respond, but she felt his eyes on her all the way to the elevator. In the reflection of the polished doors, she saw him standing in his office doorway, looking more lost than she had ever seen him. And despite everything, despite the anger and hurt and confusion, a small part of her heart ached for him, because she could see what he couldn't or wouldn't admit. He was terrified, not of the responsibility, but of something much deeper. He was terrified of feeling something real. Jessica spent the weekend avoiding Harrison's calls. He had tried reaching her at least 20 times, leaving voicemails that ranged from demanding to almost pleading. She ignored them all. She needed space to think, to process, to figure out what she was going to do. On Monday morning, she arrived at work early, hoping to avoid running into him. But when she reached her desk, there was a large gift basket waiting for her. Pregnancy books, organic teas, ginger candies for nausea, a handwritten note in Harrison's sharp handwriting. Please call me. We need to talk properly, H. Rachel appeared at her side, eyeing the basket with raised eyebrows. Someone's trying hard. He just feels obligated, Jessica said, moving the basket under her desk. Honey, men who feel obligated send flowers and a check. They don't research pregnancy nausea remedies. Rachel squeezed her shoulder. Just hear him out. But Jessica didn't get a chance to decide. At noon, Harrison appeared at her desk, looking slightly disheveled, which was completely unlike him. His tie was loosened, and there were shadows under his eyes suggesting he hadn't slept. My office, he said quietly. Please. Jessica glanced around at the curious faces watching them, then stood and followed him. When they were inside with the door closed, Harrison turned to face her. I handled everything wrong on Friday, he began. The way I spoke to you, the way I approached this situation, I'm sorry. You called me a responsibility, I know, and that was wrong. You're not a responsibility, Jessica. You're a person who deserves respect and consideration, and I failed to give you either. He ran a hand through his hair, disrupting its usual perfect styling. The truth is, I panicked. This wasn't something I could control or predict, and I defaulted to treating it like a business problem to solve. And now? Jessica asked. Now I'm asking you to give me a chance to do this right. Not as your boss, not as someone trying to control the situation, but as the father of your child who genuinely wants to be there for both of you. Jessica studied his face, looking for signs of manipulation or hidden agenda, but all she saw was genuine vulnerability. What does that look like to you? She asked carefully. I don't know, Harrison admitted, and the honesty in his voice surprised her. I've never done this before. My own father was absent in every way that mattered, even when he was physically present. I don't have a roadmap for how to be good at this, but I want to try. I want to figure it out with you. Jessica felt her resolve wavering. I can't move in with you, Harrison. Not as some arrangement where you throw money at the problem and we pretend to be something we're not. Then what if we start smaller? Harrison suggested. Dinner tonight, not at some fancy restaurant where we have to perform. At my place. I'll cook. We'll talk. Really talk. About what we both want, what we're both afraid of, and how we navigate this together, you cook. Jessica asked, surprised. A small smile tugged at Harrison's lips. I'm full of surprises. That evening, Jessica stood outside Harrison's building, second-guessing her decision to come. But before she could change her mind, the doorman greeted her by name and directed her to the private elevator to the penthouse. The doors opened directly into Harrison's home, and Jessica stepped into a space that took her breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the city lights beginning to twinkle as dusk settled. The interior was modern but warm, with rich wood tones and comfortable furniture that actually looked lived in, not like a showroom. Harrison appeared from what she assumed was the kitchen, wearing jeans and a casual sweater. She had never seen him in anything but suits. Came, he said, and she heard genuine relief in his voice. I almost didn't. I'm glad you did. He gestured toward the kitchen. I made pasta. Nothing fancy, but it's edible. Probably. Jessica followed him into a spacious kitchen, where a pot was simmering on the stove and a salad was already prepared on the counter. It was strangely domestic, seeing Harrison Blake in a kitchen, cooking dinner. Can I help? She offered. You can sit and let me take care of this, Harrison said, pulling out a stool at the kitchen island for her. I read that pregnant women should stay off their feet when possible. Harrison, I'm 3 months pregnant, not broken. I know, but humor me. He returned to the stove, stirring the sauce. How have you been feeling? Any more nausea? Some, mostly in the mornings. The ginger candies actually help. Good. I wasn't sure if that was the right thing. He plated the pasta and brought it to the island, sitting beside her instead of across from her. I've been reading a lot about pregnancy, childbirth, infant care. Did you know that babies can hear sounds from inside the womb starting around 18 weeks? Jessica looked at him with surprise. You've really been researching this? I told you I want to do this right. Harrison handed her a fork. Try it. Tell me if it's terrible. The pasta was actually delicious. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes before Harrison spoke again. Tell me about your family. Your parents. Jessica set down her fork. My mom raised me alone. My father left when I was 2. I don't remember him at all. Harrison's expression darkened. I'm sorry. Don't be. My mom was amazing. She worked 2 jobs to put me through college. She taught me to be strong, independent, to never rely on anyone else for my worth or my security. Jessica paused. She passed away 2 years ago. Cancer. Jessica, I had no idea. Why would you? We never really talked about personal things. She met his eyes. Until we did. That night, Harrison reached across the counter and took her hand. The gesture was tentative, asking permission. When she didn't pull away, his fingers curled around hers. That night wasn't just about physical attraction for me, he said quietly. I'd been fighting what I felt for you for months. The way you challenge me, the way you stand up to me when no one else does, your dedication to your work, your integrity. You got under my skin, Jessica, and it terrified me. So you pushed me away. Yes, because everyone I've ever cared about has either left or disappointed me. My father was emotionally unavailable my entire childhood. My mother died when I was 15. The one serious relationship I had ended when she admitted she was only with me for the money and connections. Harrison's jaw tightened. I learned that caring about people, letting them in, only leads to pain. So I stopped trying. Jessica squeezed his hand. That's a lonely way to live, it is, Harrison agreed. But it felt safer than the alternative. And now there's going to be a child who will depend on me, who will need me to be more than I've allowed myself to be. Harrison turned to face her fully. I'm terrified of failing them. Of failing you? But I'm more terrified of not trying. Oh, Jessica felt tears well up in her eyes. This vulnerability, this honesty, was everything she had needed from him. I'm scared too, she admitted. I'm scared of doing this alone, but I'm also scared of letting you in, only to have you shut me out again when things get difficult. I can't promise I won't mess up, Harrison said. I probably will. Multiple times, but I can promise that I won't run. I won't shut you out. And I won't treat you like an obligation ever again. They talked for hours after that, sharing stories about their childhoods, their fears about parenthood, their hopes for the future. Harrison showed her the second bedroom that adjoined the master suite. If you did decide to stay here, he said carefully, this would be yours. Your own space, your own bathroom, complete privacy. The room on the other side could be the nursery, but only if you want to. No pressure. Jessica walked through the spacious room with its own sitting area and pristine bathroom. It was beautiful, comfortable, and more importantly, it didn't feel like a gilded cage. Let me think about it, she said. Over the next 2 weeks, Harrison proved himself in small, consistent ways. He showed up at her apartment with breakfast when she texted that she was feeling nauseous. He rearranged his entire meeting schedule to accompany her to her first prenatal appointment. When Dr. Phillips confirmed that everything looked healthy and the baby was developing perfectly, Harrison held Jessica's hand so tightly she thought he might break her fingers. Can we hear the heartbeat? He asked the doctor, his voice thick with emotion. The doctor smiled and moved the Doppler across Jessica's belly. The room filled with the rapid whooshing sound of their baby's heartbeat. And Jessica watched as tears actually filled Harrison's eyes. That's our baby, he whispered, looking at Jessica with such wonder that it made her own eyes water. That's really our baby. Walking out of the doctor's office, Harrison pulled Jessica into a spontaneous hug. Thank you, he said into her hair. Thank you for letting me be here for this. You're the father, Jessica said, her voice muffled against his chest. You should be here. That night, Jessica packed a bag and let Harrison drive her to his penthouse. Just a trial run, she told him, to see if this can actually work. Harrison carried her bags to the guest room and then stood awkwardly in the doorway. I'm glad you're here. Me too, Jessica admitted. Living with Harrison was surprisingly easy. He was neat, but not obsessive, gave her space when she needed it. and seemed genuinely interested in the pregnancy books she was reading. He started coming home from work earlier, and they would cook dinner together, talking about their days. One evening, about 3 weeks after she had moved in, Jessica woke up craving ice cream at 2 in the morning. She padded to the kitchen and found Harrison already there, eating cereal in his pajama pants and nothing else. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked. "Too much on my mind," he admitted. "You. Baby wants ice cream." Harrison smiled and opened the freezer, pulling out 3 different flavors. "I didn't know which kind you'd like, so I got options." Jessica laughed, selecting the chocolate. They sat at the kitchen island together, eating ice cream and cereal respectively, and it felt absurdly normal and comfortable. "Can I ask you something?" Jessica said, licking her spoon. "What changed? Between that morning after the gala and now? You were so cold to me for months, and now you're here eating ice cream with me at 2 in the morning." Harrison set down his bowl and turned to face her. "What changed was that I couldn't hide behind my walls anymore. The baby made everything real in a way I couldn't ignore or control. And it forced me to confront the truth, which is that I'd been falling for you long before that night at the gala. And it scared me so much that I tried to destroy what we had before it could destroy me first." Harrison reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "I was a coward, Jessica. I hurt you because I was too afraid to admit that I cared." Jessica's heart pounded in her chest. "And now I'm still afraid," Harrison admitted. "But I'm more afraid of losing you than I am of admitting how I feel." "How do you feel?" Jessica asked softly. Harrison cupped her face gently in his hands. "I'm falling in love with you. Maybe I already have been for a long time. I love how strong you are, how you never back down from a fight, how you call me on my mistakes. I love the way you touch your belly when you think no one is watching, already protecting our child. I love that you're here, in my home, in my life, giving me a chance I don't deserve." Tears spilled down Jessica's cheeks. "Harrison. ... You don't have to say anything back," he said quickly. "I just needed you to know. Whatever happens between us, whatever you decide about our future, I needed you to know that this is real for me. You're real for me." Jessica set down her ice cream and leaned forward, closing the distance between them. "You idiot," she whispered against his lips. "I've been in love with you since before that night. Why do you think it hurt so much when you pushed me away?" Harrison kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. It wasn't like their first kiss at the gala, which had been hungry and desperate. This was something deeper, something that felt like coming home. When they pulled apart, Harrison rested his forehead against hers. "Stay with me. Not just until the baby comes, but really stay. Build a life with me. You asking me to move in permanently, or are you asking me for something more?" Jessica asked. "I'm asking for everything," Harrison said. "I'm asking you to take a chance on us, on the possibility that we can be a real family. Not because of the baby, but because we choose each other." Jessica smiled through her tears. Then yes. Yes, to all of it. The next 3 months passed in a blur of happiness that Jessica had never imagined possible. Harrison was attentive without being smothering, excited about every milestone of the pregnancy, and slowly but surely, the walls he had built around himself continued to crumble. At work, things had changed too. Harrison was still demanding and had high standards, but he no longer singled Jessica out for criticism. In fact, he had promoted her to senior marketing director, a decision that was met with approval from the entire team. Her work was finally being recognized for what it was: excellent. One Saturday morning, Jessica woke to find Harrison already awake, sitting up in bed with his laptop. Over the past month, they had started sleeping in the same room. Though Harrison had been careful not to push for physical intimacy beyond kissing and holding each other, he seemed determined to build their relationship on a foundation stronger than just attraction. "You're working on a weekend?" Jessica asked sleepily. Harrison closed the laptop immediately. "Not anymore. I was actually looking at baby furniture. I think it's time we start setting up the nursery." Jessica sat up, her hand going automatically to her rounded belly. At 6 months pregnant, the baby was very active, especially in the mornings. As if on cue, she felt a strong kick against her palm. "She's awake," Jessica said, smiling. Harrison's eyes lit up. Did Dr. Phillips tell you the sex? No, but I have a feeling. Jessica took his hand and placed it on her belly. Right there. Wait for it. They sat in silence for a moment, and then the baby kicked directly against Harrison's hand. His expression of pure joy and wonder made Jessica's heart swell. She's strong, Harrison said, his voice thick with emotion. Just like her mother. They spent the day shopping for the nursery, arguing playfully about color schemes and furniture styles. Jessica wanted soft yellows and whites, while Harrison kept gravitating toward everything with elaborate designs. We're not buying a crib that costs more than a car, Jessica said firmly, steering him away from an ornate custom piece. But look at the craftsmanship, Harrison protested. The baby will just spit up on it like any other crib. We're being reasonable. Harrison wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his hands on her belly. Fine, but I get to buy the mobile. I found one that plays classical music and projects stars on the ceiling. Deal. That evening, as they sat on the floor of the nursery, surrounded by boxes and instruction manuals, Harrison's phone rang. He glanced at the screen, and his expression darkened. My father, he said flatly. Jessica had heard about Edmund Blake, but never met him. Harrison had mentioned that they were estranged, barely speaking except for mandatory business matters. Are you going to answer it? She asked. Harrison declined the call. He probably heard through the business grapevine that I'm having a baby. He'll want to meet, to assess whether his future grandchild meets his standards. Harrison, he's still your father. Biologically? Yes. In every way that matters? No. Harrison returned to assembling the crib. He was never there for me, Jessica. Not when my mother was sick, not when she died, not when I needed him most. I won't subject you or our child to his judgment and coldness. Jessica could see the old pain in his eyes, the wounds that had never fully healed. She moved closer and took his face in her hands. Then we won't, she said simply. We make our own family, our own rules. We fill our child's life with so much love that she never feels the absence of people who don't deserve to know her. Harrison pulled her into his arms, holding her as tightly as he could with her belly between them. How did I get so lucky? He whispered. You stopped running, Jessica said. You let me in. 2 weeks later, Jessica was at her desk at work when a sharp pain shot through her lower back. She gasped, gripping the edge of her desk. The pain passed after a moment, but it left her shaken. Rachel appeared at her side immediately. You okay? Just a pain? Probably nothing. But an hour later it happened again, stronger this time. And then Jessica felt it, wetness. She looked down and saw blood soaking through her skirt. Terror gripped her heart. Rachel, something's wrong. Rachel was already grabbing her purse. I'm getting Harrison, don't move. Harrison appeared within seconds, his face pale with fear. I'm taking you to the hospital now. The drive there was a blur. Harrison held her hand so tightly it hurt, but Jessica barely noticed. All she could think about was the baby, praying that everything would be okay. At the hospital, Dr. Phillips met them in the emergency room. After an examination and an ultrasound that felt like it took hours, the doctor finally smiled. The baby is fine, she said. Strong heartbeat, good movement. What you experienced is called placental bleeding. It's not uncommon in the second trimester, but it can be scary. You're going to need bed rest for at least 2 weeks, maybe longer. Jessica burst into tears of relief. Harrison wrapped her in his arms, his own face wet with tears. She's okay, he kept repeating. She's okay. Dr. Phillips prescribed strict bed rest, which meant Jessica would be homebound for the foreseeable future. Harrison immediately took a leave from work, refusing to let anyone else take care of her. I'm the father, he told his confused assistant. The company can survive without me for a few weeks. My family can't. Those 2 weeks of bed rest became a turning point in their relationship. Harrison waited on her constantly, bringing her meals, reading to her, watching terrible reality TV shows that he claimed to hate, but secretly got invested in. He talked to the baby every night, his lips pressed against Jessica's belly, telling their daughter about all the things they would do together. One afternoon, as they lay in bed together, Harrison's hand tracing lazy circles on her belly, Jessica asked the question that had been on her mind. Why did you really push me away after the gala? The real reason. Harrison was quiet for a long moment. Because that night when I was with you, I felt something I'd never felt before. Complete, happy, vulnerable. And the next morning, I woke up and realized I'd given you the power to destroy me. Just like my father destroyed my mother with his indifference. Just like my ex destroyed my trust. So I did what I always do. I destroyed it first. I would never hurt you deliberately, Jessica said softly. I know that now. Back then, all I could see was the risk. I couldn't see that the real risk was losing you. Harrison kissed her forehead. I almost did lose you. If you hadn't gotten pregnant, if you hadn't given me another chance, I would have spent the rest of my life regretting that I was too afraid to fight for us. You're fighting now, Jessica pointed out. We'll fight for you every day for the rest of our lives, Harrison promised. After the 2 weeks of bed rest, Dr. Phillips cleared Jessica to resume normal activities, though she was still cautioned to take it easy. Harrison returned to work, but came home every day at 5 on the dot, something that shocked his entire staff. At 7 months pregnant, Jessica's body was changing rapidly. She felt huge and uncomfortable, but Harrison seemed to find her more beautiful than ever. He couldn't keep his hands off her belly, constantly talking to the baby, singing off key lullabies that made Jessica laugh. One evening, Harrison came home with a small velvet box. Jessica's heart skipped as he knelt beside the couch where she was resting. Before you panic, this isn't what you think it is, Harrison said with a small smile. I mean, it's jewelry, but not an engagement ring. Not yet. Not yet. Jessica's voice came out squeaky. Harrison opened the box to reveal a delicate necklace with a small pendant. 3 interlocking circles, each with a tiny diamond at the center. 3 circles for 3 people, Harrison explained, fastening it around her neck. Our family, you, me, and our daughter. I wanted you to have something that represents what we're building together. And when the time is right, when you're ready, I'll ask you properly to make this permanent. But for now, I just want you to know that you and this baby are everything to me. Jessica touched the necklace, tears streaming down her face. I love you so much it terrifies me sometimes, good Harrison said, kissing her. We can be terrified together. At 8 months pregnant, they had the nursery completely finished. Soft yellow walls, white furniture, and that expensive mobile Harrison had insisted on. It was perfect. Jessica would sometimes stand in the doorway, Harrison's arms around her, and they would talk about the future, about late-night feedings and first steps and school plays, about being the parents they had needed when they were young. The call from Harrison's father came on a Tuesday evening. It's time, Harrison answered. Edmund, he said coldly. What do you want? Jessica could hear the raised voice on the other end, angry and demanding. Harrison's jaw tightened. No, you can't meet my child, Harrison said firmly. You gave up that right when you failed to be a father to me. I won't let you treat my daughter the way you treated me. It's like an accessory to be paraded around when convenient and ignored the rest of the time. More shouting from the other end. I don't care what people will say, Harrison continued. I don't care about the family image or business implications. My family, my real family, is what matters now. And that doesn't include you. He hung up and turned off his phone, then turned to Jessica with a pained but resolved expression. Are you okay? She asked. I am, actually, Harrison said, pulling her close. For the first time in my life, I stood up to him. I chose you and our baby over his approval. It feels right. Jessica kissed him softly. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of us, Harrison corrected. For building something real and honest and full of love. At 38 weeks pregnant, Jessica went into labor at 3 in the morning. Harrison, who had been sleeping lightly for weeks waiting for this moment, was instantly awake. It's time? He asked, trying to hide his panic. It's time, Jessica confirmed through a contraction. The next 12 hours were the longest of both their lives. Harrison stayed by Jessica's side through every contraction, letting her squeeze his hand until he lost feeling in his fingers. He wiped her forehead, brought her ice chips, told her over and over how strong she was, how proud he was, how much he loved her. Finally, at 3:15 in the afternoon, their daughter entered the world with a healthy cry. The nurse placed her on Jessica's chest, and both parents stared in awe at the tiny, perfect human they had created. "She's beautiful," Harrison whispered, tears streaming down his face. "You're both so beautiful. Do you want to hold your daughter?" the nurse asked after a few minutes. Harrison looked terrified but nodded. When the nurse placed the baby in his arms, something shifted in his expression. All his fear, all his walls, all his carefully maintained control just melted away. He was completely, utterly in love. "Hi, sweetheart," he said softly. "I'm your daddy. I've been waiting so long to meet you. And I promise you I'm going to spend every day of my life making sure you know how loved you are, how wanted you are, how you're the best thing that ever happened to me and your mama." Jessica watched through happy tears as Harrison cradled their daughter, swaying gently and talking to her in a voice so full of love and tenderness that it made her heart ache in the best way. "What should we name her?" Harrison asked, looking up at Jessica. They had debated names for months but never quite decided. But looking at their daughter now, Jessica knew. "Emma," she said. "Emma Catherine Blake." Emma, Harrison repeated, testing it out. "It's perfect. She's perfect." Later that night, after the visitors had left and Emma was sleeping in the bassinet beside Jessica's hospital bed, Harrison sat in the chair next to her, holding her hand. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for giving me this. It's for giving me a family. For not giving up on me, even when I gave you every reason to." "Thank you for letting me in," Jessica replied. "For fighting your fear and choosing us." Harrison leaned forward and kissed her gently. "I choose you, every day, every moment. I choose us." "Good," Jessica smiled, "because there's no going back now." "I wouldn't want to," Harrison said, looking over at their sleeping daughter. "This right here is everything I didn't know I needed, everything I was too afraid to want. And now that I have it, I'm never letting go." 6 weeks later, on a quiet Sunday morning, Harrison made breakfast while Jessica fed Emma. It was a routine they had fallen into. This domestic life that felt both brand new and like it had always been this way. When Emma was fed and content, in her bouncer, Harrison took Jessica's hand and led her to the living room. He knelt down on one knee, pulling out a ring box. "I know I said I'd wait until you were ready," Harrison began, "but I can't wait anymore. Not because I'm impatient, but because every day I spend with you and Emma, I'm more certain than I've ever been about anything. Jessica Carter, you challenged me, infuriated me, saw through all my defenses, and loved me anyway. You gave me a daughter and a family and a reason to be better than I ever thought I could be. Will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving that I'm worthy of the gift you've given me?" Jessica was already crying, already nodding before he finished speaking. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." Harrison slipped the ring on her finger, a simple but stunning diamond that caught the morning light. Then he stood and kissed her, deep and passionate and full of promise. Emma chose that moment to let out a gurgle from her bouncer, and they both laughed, breaking apart to look at their daughter. "I think she approves," Jessica said. Harrison scooped Emma up, holding her against his chest with one arm while wrapping the other around Jessica. "My girls," he said, kissing the top of Emma's head, then Jessica's. "My whole world." Jessica leaned into him, feeling the steady beat of his heart, the warmth of his embrace, the weight of their daughter between them. This was what love looked like. Not perfect, not always easy, but real and honest and worth fighting for. Harrison Blake, the cold and controlling CEO who had pushed her away, who had hurt her and made her cry, had transformed into this man. A man who changed diapers at 3 a.m. without complaint, who sang lullabies off-key, who looked at her like she hung the moon, who loved their daughter with a fierceness that took her breath away. "I love you," Jessica said, looking up at him. "I love our life. I love what we've built." "I love you more than I knew was possible," Harrison replied. "And I'm going to spend every single day showing you just how much." And he did. Not with grand gestures or expensive gifts, though those came too, but with small moments. Morning coffee made just the way she liked it, a hand on the small of her back as they walked. The way he looked at her across the dinner table like she was the only person in the world. The way he got up for night feedings without being asked. The way he held her when she cried over postpartum emotions and told her she was doing an amazing job. They got married 6 months later in a small ceremony with just close friends. Rachel was the maid of honor, and Emma was the star of the show. In a tiny white dress passed between guests who all wanted to hold her. At the reception, as they swayed together on the dance floor, Harrison whispered in Jessica's ear, "You saved me." No, Jessica corrected, smiling up at him. "We saved each other." And in the end, that was the truth. Two broken people who had found each other in the most unexpected way, who had fought through fear and pain and misunderstanding to build something beautiful. A family, a love, a life worth living. Harrison Blake had learned that control and walls couldn't protect him from pain, but opening his heart to love could lead him to joy he never imagined. And Jessica Carter had learned that sometimes the person who hurts you the most can also become the person who heals you if you're both brave enough to try. Their story wasn't perfect. They still argued sometimes. Harrison still struggled with his need for control, and Jessica still pushed back when he tried to fix everything. But they learned, they grew, they forgave, and above all, they loved. And as Emma grew, she would be surrounded by that love. She would never doubt for a moment that she was wanted, cherished, and adored by both her parents. She would grow up seeing a healthy relationship where two people chose each other every day, where communication and compromise mattered more than pride, where love wasn't just a word, but an action proven over and over again. Years later, when Emma would ask about how her parents met, they would laugh and tell her an edited version about how her daddy was her mommy's boss, how they didn't like each other very much at first, but then they discovered that sometimes the person who challenges you the most is exactly the person you need. And when Emma was old enough to understand, they would tell her the whole truth about fear and mistakes and second chances, about how love isn't always easy, but it's always worth fighting for, about how the best things in life often come from the moments that scare us most. But that was all in the future. For now, on this perfect day, Harrison and Jessica danced at their wedding with their daughter sleeping peacefully in her grandmother Rachel's arms nearby. And they knew without a doubt that they had found their happy ending. Not the ending, really, just the beginning of forever. Hey, thank you for taking the time to listen to this story. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to click like, share this story with your friends and family, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on more meaningful stories.